Day 7 of LSU spring practice. We've got your full practice report next. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. LSU Tuesday began the third week of spring, their first spring under Lane Kiffin. Media had our customary five-minute period, so we got to watch about 25 minutes. The 11-on-11 period, which, as Jakeem Jackson told us, is called Quick Six, where they run 6 plays, ones-on-ones, twos-on-twos, very quickly. 11-on-11, and then they go into individual periods. So that's the 25 minutes that we got to watch. So I'll go through the play-by-play of the Quick Six here, and then I'll give you my notes from the day, including a new starter on the offensive line and some notable limitations and absences. So we'll get to that. It is worth noting, of course, in the 11-on-11 period, that Landon Clark continues running with the ones and Husan Longstreet is running with the twos. So if you're an everydayer, you've heard me explain this, but just very quickly for those who might be finding us for the first time, the team begins practice indoors. When they come outside, that's when we have our 25 minutes of availability. They run an 11-on-11 period where ones-on-ones are on one field, simultaneously twos-on-twos on another field. I stand in the end zone between the two fields, which are parallel to one another, so I can kind of keep an eye on both, primarily watching the ones, but taking note of what is notable with the twos as well when I have the opportunity. So Landon Clark quarterbacking the ones, Husan Longstreet quarterbacking the twos. First down, so again, very quick, and sometimes they're simulating different down and distances. So last week, we told you they ran a red zone period in Quick Six. They also last week ran all third downs. This was the first time I noticed that they had an electronic sign on the sideline with a word, which I guess is telling formation or play, whatever. Like, for example, it would say Falcon on the electronic sign on the sideline. So everyone's looking to the sideline to catch all that. So a lot of it is also going through the simulation of what it's going to be like running this offense. So first down, Landon Clark hit Winnie Watkins, the Ole Miss transfer, on a crossing route coming from right to left, gained probably about 10 yards. Again, they're not tackling here. And while there are refs at practice, they didn't seem to be really minding this drill in particular to blow a whistle dead or something like that. So it's sort of just go until the coach blows a whistle and says, all right, the play's done. So Winnie Watkins, a reception on a crossing route for about 10 yards. Second down, I think this is something that's telling because we have been watching the quarterbacks run a lot in practice. They ran a quarterback draw. So Landon Clark takes the snap. He pumps to the right and then just tucks it and runs right up the middle for a gain about 5 yards. But again, this was a design quarterback run, and it's something very clearly that they're going to take advantage of. Last week, one of the drills and individual that we got to see was a design quarterback run drill where the quarterbacks were running boots and sweeps around left and right end. So this was an instance where this was a design quarterback run. Third play, beautiful throw by Landon Clark on a sideline route to Malik Elzy. Elzy is the big-bodied receiver who transferred in from Illinois. Again, we've primarily seen Watkins, Jackson Harris, and Trey Brown running with the ones so far. This shows, though, Elzy is starting to make a little bit of a move. I told you last week with the twos, Elzy had a touchdown reception in that red zone drill. Well, today he was rotating in, working with the one. So they are seeing a little bit of a rotation there with those guys. The fourth play was a toss. It was a sweep to the right to Caden Durham. So again, just hut and then a toss to the right, Durham around right end. The fifth play was a dive play. So a dive up the middle to Caden Durham, went for a short gain. And then the best defensive play came on the last play. And it was the freshman Deuce Geralds who continues to show up and continues to make plays. So Geralds and Blockton were the starting interior tackles. So Geralds on the left side, Blockton on the right. Well, on this particular play, Blockton gets up the field and Geralds loops around to his right, the left side of the offensive line, and he gets in the passing lane of Landon Clark and gets his hands up and deflects the pass that was intended for Caden Durham in the flat. So a really nice play there by Deuce Geralds, who you can just tell with Geralds, he's not the big, giant, space-eating defensive tackle. He's a smaller guy. They have him listed at 6'2", 275, something like that. But he's a guy that is very explosive on his first step, and you can just tell is very active. Active hands, active feet. It reminds me a lot of the way Bernard Gooden played last year for LSU. Undersized interior lineman, but very disruptive, made an awful lot of plays. So nice job there. So those are the 6 plays in the quick 6. From that 6 plays, they then went into the individual period drill. So a couple of the things that I thought were notable here was that on the offensive line, we had seen the same offensive line with the ones left to right so far, where it had been Jordan Seaton at left tackle, Devin Harper at left guard, Braylon Moore at center, Alubat right guard, and Weston Davis at right tackle. That was the same except for one position switch. Devin Harper went with the 2s, and it was Bordelon who ran with the 1s in this drill in particular. So Bordelon, who we've seen throughout his LSU career, wears number 67, has primarily been sort of that special teams guy and tackle eligible player. And there's 2 Bordelons, so forgive me, I want to make sure I have the right one. It was Bo. It was Bo Bordelon, Bo Bordelon is going into his 5th. He's a 5th-year senior. So Bo Bordelon ran with the 1s at left guard. Devin Harper ran with the 2s. So your second offensive line, left to right, Bryson Martinez at left tackle, Devin Harper at left guard, William Satterwhite, the Tennessee transfer, at center, Jaquan Sprinkle, the redshirt junior transfer from NC Central, at right guard, and then Darren Stray, the offensive tackle transfer from Kentucky, was at right tackle. We have seen Stray run at both tackle and guard early in these position drills. Last week, the first practice, Stray was running at guard and Bordelon was at tackle. But anyway, that was the switch here. So a lot of transfers on that second unit. And, of course, the true freshman at left tackle. But the big difference here was Harper going to the 2s and Bo Bordelon running with the 1s at left guard. And then, of course, Malik Elzy, as we mentioned, making a reception with the 1s. So you're starting to see some guys get opportunities with their play so far in spring, have the opportunities to jump in with the first group. Let me knock out my quick break. We'll come back. There were some absences, a new player wearing a yellow no-contact jersey, and a couple of observations both on the defensive side and with the pass catchers. You'll love to hear this about one of the coaches. That's coming up here. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The NCAA Women's Basketball Tournament Elite 8 wrapped up with the UConn Huskies staying undefeated at 38-0 after a decisive win over Notre Dame, while the UCLA Bruins rallied past Duke behind a dominant second-half performance. On the other side, the remaining 1 seeds in South Carolina and Texas will be determined after their matchups against TCU and Michigan, respectively. Next up, the Final Four is set for Friday in Phoenix, with the winners advancing to the national championship on Sunday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You could bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, matchups, all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. The most notable absence on Tuesday was Sam Leavitt, who was not in attendance at practice. It is worth noting that if you follow Sam Leavitt on Instagram, of course, the transfer quarterback from Arizona State, he shared on his Instagram story on Monday a note, got the pins out of my foot from the initial surgery. LOL, did not get injured again. Hands raised emoji. So a little update there from Sam Leavitt on the update. So Leavitt had the Lisfranc surgery, injured his foot back in September, tried to play on it, ended up having the surgery in October of last year, and caused him to miss the duration of the season at Arizona State. As we've noted, he's been out there at spring practice, not doing any of the 11-on-11 or running work, but we have seen him throwing, right? All the quarterback receiver drills, the handoff drills, but anything in 11-on-11 team or running, Leavitt has not been participating. So he was absent, as clearly he got the the pins out of his foot from the initial surgery. That's great progress. So on this day, on Tuesday, it was Landon Clark, Husan Longstreet, and Emil Picarella as the three quarterbacks for LSU running the drills. Whit Weeks also was absent again. No reason given yet for Whit's absence. He had been there early in spring, just wearing his jersey and shorts, no helmet, not participating, but out there sort of with his position group and sort of being a coach on the field. But no Whit, no Sam Leavitt. I thought it was so interesting because when they go to individual, right, every position group goes with their position coach. So the running backs go with Kevin Smith, and the offensive line goes with Eric Wolford, and so on. Well, with offense, it's interesting because the quarterbacks are trying to get work with these position groups. So the first individual period, the quarterbacks and the running backs were working together on handoffs. Makes sense, right? So you had Charlie Weiss and Kevin Smith working together with their groups, the quarterbacks and the running backs working on handoffs, which meant the receivers were down at another end of the field running routes and catching passes. Well, it was interesting because normally when that happens, if the quarterbacks aren't with them, you'd either have walk-on quarterbacks or you'd have a GA or somebody like that throwing the routes to the receivers. Well, I trained my eyes over so we're in the end zone by where the quarterbacks and the running backs are doing handoffs, and I look sort of down the west sideline, about 50, 60 yards away, and I see the receivers running routes and a coach, a GA, someone's throwing them passes. And so I'm looking, I'm like, man, that guy could spin it a little bit. And so I get out my camera on my phone and I zoom in like a 5X. It's T. Martin. So you're talking about the former Tennessee quarterback who won a national championship, a guy who played in the NFL. Needless to say, T. Martin can be a resource in this instance, throwing passes to the receivers. The one notable when the quarterbacks and receivers got together, Jackson Harris did have a drop today. He's been so good. I'm not trying to single him out as having, doing something poor because he wears number 4. He's 6'2", 202. He's been running with the ones. He has been outstanding throughout this spring. But that was just the one notable thing that I saw today. I didn't get to watch every rep because I'm trying to watch everything on 2 fields, but that was the one drop that I charted. And it was a pass from Husan Longstreet. Longstreet put it on and Harris just dropped it. I also thought, Tradez Green continues wearing the gold no-contact jersey. Malachi Thomas joined him. That's the Pitt tight end transfer. Malachi Thomas joined him today in a gold no-contact jersey. It's the first time we've seen Thomas in a no-contact. He's 6'3", 242. As I understand it, Thomas is going to be the hand-in-the-dirt attached tight end. Zach Grace, the transfer from Oregon, is going to be the H-back, right? The sort of offset 2-point stance, H-back blocker. And then Tradez is going to be the queen piece on the chessboard. They move all over the place. But both Tradez and Malachi Thomas, both in gold no-contact jerseys on Tuesday. Defensively, we talked last week about Blake Baker and how he's sort of managing, which is different. Like Blake Baker last year coached the linebackers. Well, now Chris Kiffin is the co-DC and linebackers coach. So Blake Baker is the defensive coordinator, but we're told primarily would work with the stars. But one of the things that we've talked about is with such a deep coaching staff, and they have a lot of numbers on the coaching staff. It's interesting because what this has allowed is so much specialization. So, for example, in the 4 defensive period, the 4 individual periods for the defense, The first period, Blake Baker worked with two guys. It was PJ Woodland and Aiden Anding. Just those two cornerbacks. And maybe in that instance, because what we have seen is in the team periods, when they go nickel, it's Pickett and Jakeem Jackson that are your wide corners, and Woodland kicks to the nickel. So maybe this was Blake Baker working with Woodland and Anding as nickel. So for an entire period, the defensive coordinator, Blake Baker, is working with two guys, the two primary nickelbacks. Well, then in the next period, Blake Baker went and worked with all of the safeties. So he ran drills with all the safeties. Of course, we know that Jake Olson is the safeties coach, and I don't know if they split the group or however they did it there, but he went and worked with the safeties. So he went from working with nickelbacks to safeties to then in the third period, he was with Deshaun Spears, CJ Jim Coyley, and Aiden Hall, who are your star linebacker position. So he went, again, he worked with two nickels, the safety group in the second period, three star linebackers in the third period, and then in the fourth period, the entire secondary was there in a shell drill. So no linebackers or defensive line. It was just the secondary, and then you had receivers, quote unquote. It was defensive backs who were lined up just as a scout receiver, and so they were running coverages. And Blake Baker was overseeing that entire drill. So I guess the point is, with so much staff now, Blake Baker is sort of overseeing the entire defense, and his responsibilities are being divvied up among all the position groups there throughout these practices. It's pretty fascinating to watch because, again, a year ago, he would have just been parked with the linebackers. Now we're seeing so much specialization because they have so many different coaches on staff and they can break it down. You wonder, it's fair to wonder, are there too many cooks in the kitchen? I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is they got a lot of really talented coaches, a lot of diversity there on the staff as well with roles and responsibilities, and they're making use of all of it. Again, they're at the halfway point of spring. They're 7 practices into spring of their 15 spring workouts, and this is the time in spring where you can try and taste and sample different things because effectively what I like to say is spring allows you to set the pole position for fall camp. You go through spring, you try a lot of different people in a lot of different places. So when you get to fall camp, boom, you know who your ones are, at least where you're starting from in different position battles. Remember, a year ago in spring, Braylon Moore wasn't even running as the first team center. You still had a lot of DJ Chester in spring last year at first team center. So, and Braylon Moore, of course, was brought in to be the center. So you're going to try a lot of different stuff in spring, and we're clearly seeing all that. So that's your Tuesday practice report. They are back on Thursday. We have the same media availability. The interesting thing for this week is Saturday. And so every week the media, we get an email with our availability for that week of spring. So what we're told is Saturday, from whatever time they let us in, we are allowed to watch the duration of practice. So we can't take videos or pictures during that. But that tells me I think we're going to get to see more of practice and maybe actually see some team periods as well on Saturday. And they also said location TBD. So that means it could be at the practice facility or it could be in Tiger Stadium. This past Saturday, LSU did work out in Tiger Stadium. There was no media access to that. So as we get more info, as we get more access, we'll certainly keep you posted and let you know how it's going out there on the Ponderosa as LSU's halfway done with Lane Kiffin's first spring as LSU head football coach. And we thank you for being with us here on Locked On LSU. So do me a favor, please smash the like button. If you're there on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. If you're on podcast, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day for Locked On LSU. It's your team every day.